Ready to shoot it. Good evening. I call to order the Board of Education meeting for Prospect Heights School District 23 for Thursday, September 24th, 2023. It is 7:02 p.m.
14th. This is the 14th. Yeah.
What did I say?
You said 24.
Oh, I said the 20. My apologies. For Thursday, September the 14th, 2023 at 7:03 p.m.
Yeah, it was Friday. It's not good.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Gradanis.
Present.
Mrs. McClaney.
Present.
Mr. Nordmark.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mrs. Butwinski.
Here.
Mr. Novak.
All right. Stand for the pledge.
Yep.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. All right.
Yes.
At each regular and special open meeting, members of the public and district employees may comment on or ask questions of the Board of Education. If you would like to address the board, please complete the available form and give it to Mrs. O'Donnell, our recording secretary. Do we have any?
form?
Or do we have anything?
Nothing for now.
Okay. Communications?
Right. So thanks again for everyone joining us tonight for our board meeting. We especially scheduled this meeting because we're going to dedicate a brand new mural here. As you've seen throughout our buildings, we've got ongoing improvements as we can in multiple phases. And this piece of art is something that was worked on over a couple of years and was installed this summer. So I'm going to ask Dr. Nystrom to come forward and Kaylee as well, so that we can just talk about how this came to fruition and ask our artist to dedicate it by just initialing the wall.
Yeah, if I can have Mrs. Keon, or Miss Keon come up here as well, too, the art teacher that kind of helped with the whole process. So, thanks, Kaylee, for being a part of it. Once we redid this whole room, we had a lot of gray walls, and we wanted to add some color to them. And so we have a little partnership that meets with me monthly, and they started drafting out some ideas of what you would probably have in a library. So books and themes, and they wanted something that captured all the possibilities at MacArthur and learning. And so that was kind of the theme that the group pitched to Mrs. Keon with Art Club and Art Extensions. And so she worked with a couple of students to put together some ideas, and Kaylee's was one that definitely the group loved tremendously. So, Ms. Keon, do you have anything to?
Yeah, first and foremost, Kaylee is extremely flexible and very creative, as you can see, and we did a great job going back and forth with the ideas and taking our vision and completing it into this beautiful mural. And Kaylee did a wonderful job just evoking all of the activities and important things that go around here at MAC. So, yeah, thank you so much, Kaylee, for all of your hard work.
And so also, if you can sign right there where it says your name and class of 23, part of District 23. So again, it's a full circle.
Right.
Piece. Go ahead, Kaylee. Thank you.
Yeah, we even went through a mascot change. The graphic of the mascot changed, and then real life experience, you send something in and then you have to revise and send it in and revise. And Katie did a great job of that, recoloring and reworking some of the mural here. So thanks very much, Kaylee. Appreciate it. it will live on for many, many years here in MacArthur's library. The second communication agenda item tonight is our presentation of our teachers receiving tenure. The process of being inducted into Prospect Heights School District 23 starts on their first day of hire with sort of the nuts and bolts of how to get around and how to find things. But really we spend the first 2 years of an educator's career with us talking more about the culture of what it means to be a teacher here in District 23. The way we do things, why we do them that way, our belief structure, and it's a pretty rigorous, it's 9 meetings the first year and maybe 5 meetings the second. There are some paired observations. So that process of becoming indoctrinated into the culture of District 23 takes some time. But it is a great achievement when folks have demonstrated over the years their outstanding professionalism and work as educators. So we have, for the following folks, if we'd call you up, we have a pin, a lapel pin for you with District 23, proud to be D23. And then we'll stage a photo here or outside. You wanted to do it outside?
I was going to get up front unless you'd like to get everybody here in the picture as well.
Wherever you think you have the
Up
best.
front.
Up front, okay. Terrific. So, and I'm not sure that everybody's here. I saw a bunch of folks are here. Garth Anderson. If you would just wait up here first. Yeah. Mhm. Sandra Carey. S. Carey at D23. Scary. That's right, because we have shoots coming up in a minute. Danielle Jeangrand. And it's so nice to see you. Danielle is out on maternity right now. Jessa Gianneschi at Congratulations. Yeah. Shauna Hoots. And she is Shoots at D23. So you get this one creative. Kelly Krause. Kelly is here. And Janet Keown, our art teacher at MacArthur. Karen Lure, our music teacher at Sullivan. Elizabeth Naranjo is our bilingual teacher at Ross. I don't see her here today, but she's on the list, as is Kristen Nolfi, special education. Kristen's been in a couple of buildings in her time here, back at Sullivan this year in our special ed department. Thank you. Stella Prosek from West Rock. And last but not least, from Eisenhower, Allie Wajak. Congratulations. Yeah, thanks. And Chris, you're going to follow, they're going to lead out, or do you want to take one with everybody here?
I'll do it out front.
Okay, out front.
Yeah.
And we don't have pins for you all yet. These are our new teachers, new hires to the district this year. But if you would come forward again, and we'll give you a round of applause and then take a quick photo as well. Denise Ferrone from Sullivan and Sullivan. And Kazra Allen, I didn't see Kazra here. Caitlin Arvidsson, special ed teacher at MacArthur. Ben Bradstrader from Betsy Ross. Got it. And we have others. We're going to write through the list, but I only see one left. Amy Brubaker is at Eisenhower. Kelsey Kane Nelson is our social worker at MacArthur. Christina Dreyer is a teacher at Sullivan. Dory Elzarardi is a program assistant at Eisenhower. Sophia Marcheco is a first grade teacher at Eisenhower. Cameron Severino is our new band director here at MacArthur. Jeannie Whitfield is an early childhood educator at Eisenhower. Lisa Zavacki is a fourth grade teacher at Sullivan. And last but not least, Quinn Wilcox is returning from her student teaching that she did with us last year to a full-time position in District 23. So welcome. And I think is Chris. Oh, here comes Chris. He'll meet you then. Thank you.
What a good team player. My person. It's a good teammate.
The next agenda item is a reminder about the North Cook Division meeting. They just sent out the sign-up, the registration for it, but it is Monday, October 30th. And if we have interest in attending, which we usually have a handful of folks go, you can let Michelle know. And we'll forward the details on. I forgot, I read it, but I can't remember who's presenting and what they're talking
Yeah, I
about.
didn't see that.
It's in Rolling Meadows.
Oh, it's Tony Sanders.
Yes.
Oh.
Tony Sanders, the new state superintendent, is
It's
coming
at
around
the-
all the divisions.
At the Meridian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meridian and Rolling Meadows, and it's
Yeah.
Tony talking of, like, doing all this.
Yeah. Just a quick photo. Go ahead.
Nobody's watching.
Well, we won't pay attention.
Michelle, I'd like to go to that.
Okay. And Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Haley.
Three girls.
The three ladies are
Oh,
really
why?
All
That's
right.
good. Brent and Brian, you guys can come too.
We'll be prepping for Halloween candy. Last minute prep.
When do we need to let you know? I would.
By the 26th.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So the 25th.
Okay.
Got it.
It looks to be a good one though.
Yeah.
With
Yeah. And Tony's doing a good job getting around to all the different regions and talking to lots of people. So. Sadly, we have a resignation from the board to announce. Mr. Jim Bednar, who's been a longtime member of the board, diligent service to the community, acted as board president through part of our COVID time before he handed that off to Carol in a really difficult time, has submitted his resignation as of September 7th. We thank him for his many years of service and his dedication to District 23. We will begin the process and timeline for posting, reviewing applications, interviewing, and selecting a replacement. So I had the information in the memo that the board has. That'll go out tomorrow, and then we'll publish it in the newspaper as well. I'll talk to Kevin about the timeline of that and where we're at with applications and so forth. But if you know of folks that might be interested in serving in that capacity, that will finish out Jim's term for the next 2 years, till April of 2025. And lastly, under communications, just a big thank you to everybody who came out and supported the Family Fest last Friday. It was really well attended again. Our PTO partners did a great job of supporting both the food side, but also involved in a lot of the pre-planning. We've learned some lessons from the first time we did it and made some enhancements and improvements that we think went really well to help support that event. And again, can't pull it off without all the vendors and the volunteers and everybody coordinating. And hopefully I know our board members were there and able to meet and greet some of our new families. So again, just a big thank you to everybody and everybody on the admin team who helped pull that plan together. And those are the communication items.
All right, thanks, Tom. Okay, committee reports, buildings and sites. Carol?
Okay, get my cheaters on here. So the building sites meeting was last week on Tuesday. We started with a review of a couple of items from the summer work. The ROE approved the Sullivan Plumbing repairs, so that is up and running. And the MAC HVAC project, when all is said and done, we have a $7,500 credit on that, on the controllers that were ordered. Let's see, and then work on signage to make sure that the buildings are consistent, the signage for the HVAC, right?
Just for welcome and enter through this door, mostly safe.
Talking about the control, the language.
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry, the language on the controllers,
Yeah,
yes, but those
consistency
are
among
consistent.
buildings,
Yeah.
right.
Sorry, I thought you said signage.
Sorry. Let's see. We talked about the replacement for window sidings and doors, which we'll talk about this evening as well. Also, the window shades that will go on the new windows. We talked about that, and in discussions with Archon, alternative options were identified. The roller shades instead of, I forget what the other ones were, panels, I think, would yield a significant savings. So that we'll talk about tonight as well. Let's see. We had a discussion about the facilities and discussion about the potential 2024 referendum opportunities, and that is on the agenda for discussion this evening as well. We talked about, the district received a request from PHYBS, the Prospect Heights Youth Baseball League, to install a shed at the ball field. The request was for a shed measuring 12 by 12, so we had the specs on that. But
Which
there's no-
field?
The
Over here.
Phantom baseball
field.
field, the one in the middle of the property,
Nice.
But where would the shed be?
behind
Shed
the
is
first,
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, behind the first base, kind of dugout
Line.
area.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's
Wow.
actually a 10 by 16. It wasn't a 12 by 12, it's a 10 by 16.
It's a pretty big structure.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's where the porta potty
they have a lot of.
Yeah, it's kind of where the
Yeah.
porta potties are
By the
now.
porta potty.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Another break in plumbing was identified, that's coming from the MAC staff bathroom and running into the courtyard here. So DeFranco is putting together a proposal to repair that.
This is never ends.
It's just like your house, right? You finish one project, something else goes.
So DeFranco's the same company that did the
Right.
Sullivan. We had a request from help with an Eagle Scout project. Jason Prempas, is that his last name?
Mhm.
He's met with Dr. Nystrom to discuss opportunities to work with the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission, which we've done things with before about the prairie field. His project is to transplant seedlings into the Mac Prairie area, and the project is to start next Friday after school, with Mac students helping and scouts and volunteers from the Prospect Heights Natural Resource Commission to help over the weekend.
Sounds like a great
I think
project.
the MacArthur Girl Scout troop is helping with that Saturday, right? Pouring weeds, helping. We got an email about it.
Look, if it's not tomorrow, he's not with it. Right?
Maybe I think that the
I think
Girl
so.
Scouts.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the MacArthur 6th grade Girl Scout troop has
Yeah.
been
He's
asked
pulled
to
that.
help with.
That whole project has been really, we've done it in multiple phases, but it's looking more and more like a natural habitat and not like just overgrown weeds. So
Yeah.
really some nice, and the plantings will obviously help expedite that.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Babysitting.
But that's the area right next to Patriot Park, or that's
Yes.
the area closer to
I believe it's
Sullivan?
this one
This one right over.
behind the MacArthur side, not the one
Right, okay.
outside of Ross Sullivan.
Look, yeah, because they're really active out there working
Yeah.
on that,
Yeah.
the resource committee. Okay.
I just think it's nice that they're including multiple groups of people to help
Yeah.
with it,
Mhm.
right?
That's-
Like give some.
That's the idea with the
Yeah.
It's a great project.
Eagle Scout
Right,
project,
yeah.
so.
That's really cool.
And then the last thing was the school maintenance project grant, which would provide $50,000 to the district, and that is also on the agenda tonight. And that's it. Did I miss anything?
No, it was great.
Okay.
Can I just ask just what like about the plumbing overall?
Yeah.
So like how like what's the general gist of the MAC issue?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is we have some clay pipe that goes from the staff bathroom directly into the courtyard, where we had some recurrent clogging in the bathroom. They cambered it and identified some cracks. So it's operational now, it's working, it is a slow leak, it's outside, we need to get it fixed. We're waiting on pricing to come in from DeFranco so we can understand exactly what the scope is. We've identified it's a smaller area. Right now it's isolated underneath the pavers, right underneath where the shade structure is. So it's all outside,
It's
which
all
is
outside.
great. So
Yeah.
it's minimal disruption,
Right.
but we're just waiting. And then we'll bring that forward to construction and buildings and sites so we can kind of get going on it.
But the gist of that is they need to dig it up, like swap it out
Just
with
like
PVC,
they- yep.
and then the same thing as the next one. Okay.
But luckily it's all outside.
Right now.
That's great that it's all outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Sullivan projects are we done or is there another phase to
We are
that coming?
totally done.
Okay.
We're totally done. So the plumbing, we had worked with Archon to get the emergency approval from the ROE. That was approved and then signed off on. That project came in right in alignment with the budget. We budgeted 150, and I think we're going to be right around 100. So yeah.
We still
And
do
the
need
flooring
to
was
swap
all
out
done.
the flooring.
We did. That
Oh,
was
did?
done. That was done over the weekend.
Oh,
so that was
great.
done. We just have to wax it. But now it's all been returned to tile floor, which is great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. All right, awesome. All right, thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
2 days. We missed a
That's
lot.
what I know. Look at that.
Finance Committee, Mary Lynn?
Yes, okay, we met as well. We discussed changes that were made to the budget from the previous month. And we will be having a public hearing later this evening, and then we'll be voting to hopefully pass the budget. And so it's an exciting time of the year. We also discussed the interfund transfer resolution, which we're also going to be voting on this evening as well. We discussed Baker Tilly, the auditors, still working on getting our books transitioned from cash basis to modified accrual basis. So we look forward to hearing from them soon. And we are also conducting a transportation route rider review, which is something we have done previously more with external help on that, but it's a good thing to do and just kind of scrutinize what's going on with our busing and bus routes and eligible students. Then we discussed many of the same things at Buildings and Sites did, the bid process for the windows, sidings, and doors at Ross Sullivan, and Grodzki. We too discussed the window shades, and we also discussed the school maintenance program grant, which we'll be voting on later this evening as well, just like they did Buildings and Sites. And then we too also discussed the potential for having a referendum on the ballot both in spring of 2024, and if that doesn't go well, possibly then in fall of 2024. And that's about all we talked about.
Any questions?
Sorry.
All right. Thank you, Marilyn. All right, NSSCO, Dr. Carol.
Okay, last night was the NSSCO meeting. It started actually with a moment of silence for a longtime staff member at Kirk School, Julie Hollenby, who passed away from cancer, and so the principal kind of did a kind of a summary of her time at Kirk. Then there were 17 teachers who were granted tenure, so each were announced and congratulated like we did tonight. There were 3 staff members granted non-probationary status. And then they did have Shining Stars. That was the NSSCO Transportation Workshop. NSSCO for many years has conducted a workshop for transportation. It started out with just the bus drivers, and now it's taxi drivers, van drivers. Initially it was just NSSCO transportation, but now other districts are joining in, and other transportation companies. So that took place in August. And
Can I just interrupt? Have Chris just give a shout out specifically to the family who was recognized, because you were going to get there? I'm sorry.
yeah, I was going to get there.
Oh, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Do you know them?
Yeah, Jack and Michelle Reynolds live in District 23, and their oldest son, who's a sophomore this year, went through District 23 schools and programs, and then he did transition to minor for 5th grade through 8th grade, and now he's over at Kirk. But they did the keynote for the transportation workshop and really kind of just shared their experiences with transporting their son and having to kind of put their hands into all the drivers and the aides and really trust them with his needs. And so it was really nice that NSSCO recognized them for coming out and doing that in August and delivering that keynote. So it was pretty neat.
They're a lovely family.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes, and they have 2 other. Oh no, I'll take that back. 1 child, 1 soon to be.
Yeah, they
in like 2 years.
soccer coach for the kindergartners
Aw,
last year, so
nice.
he's connected to a lot of the
Yeah.
kindergarten families too.
Yes, which a couple more come through.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay. So after Shining Stars, Brian Bulger, who runs the Sunrise Lake facility, did a presentation. He does an annual presentation on kind of the data that they keep and different programs and how it can, from year to year, how that changes. So I can pass them around. There's a report. And they found that, obviously things quieted down during the pandemic, but things are back in pre-pandemic operation. So, and their participation numbers are up, and so they're back in good stead. So, then next was the superintendent report. Meg Schnorr was pointed out that DOJ is proposing to revise the regulation implementing Title II of the ADA. I just copied this in here. Oh, it was to make websites accessible to all, and so we've had discussions before about NSSCO is for students with special needs, and the website should be accessible to those students and their families, and that's not always the case. So that's what this legislation targets. And then in the state, there have been a couple of changes to the Open Meetings Act. One has to do with reasonable rules of conduct for athletic and extracurricular school events, and it allows the board to make policies to bar people if they don't follow the proper conduct. So, and then the other addition to the Open Meetings Act was a clause to allow remote participation in board meetings for board members due to unexpected child care obligations. It's been just for sickness and emergencies and work-related issues, but now they've added this other component. So, and let's see what else. She also did a review of NSSCO.
Is that one applicable to us?
Yeah.
That's everybody, right?
It's everybody, yeah.
It's all the
Yeah.
OMA. Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, I just thought, I mean, I hadn't kept up to speed on that, and I
Okay,
thought it
no.
would be pertinent.
Yep.
So, review of NSSCO participation in the celebration of cultures in Mount Prospect. So students and staff from the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program led the national anthem in American Sign.
So all in favor?
Aye.
So vote was 5-0 at 7:42 p.m. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. McPartland to address the board with any necessary updates.
Yes, I just have a brief presentation, which I think we're going to do here. Right? Not that one. The other one. It's a blue one.
Sorry, I told the wrong one.
It's okay. Throw it.
Call it some names.
And restate the end of year balances as well as the adjustments to fiscal 24 starting. And then we'll go ahead, work on generating our projection models and following that conversion. So any questions, you guys? I feel like we've kind of gone through this a few times, so I'm happy to entertain anything that anybody or a member of the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Okay, is there any board member who has questions or wishes to be heard? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board? So then, may I have a motion to close the public hearing on the 2023-24 annual school budget?
I move to close the public hearing on the 2023-2024 annual school budget.
Second.
All right, same as opening. So
Well,
Mary
Finance
Lynn-
Committee would do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So tell them, Fred.
So moved by Mary Lynn, seconded by Brett. Voice vote to close 2023-24 annual school budget.
All in
Aye.
favor?
All in favor, sorry.
Aye.
All opposed?
Second.
Same as opening, closing system. So
Well,
Mary
Finance
Lynn-
Committee would do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So tell them, Fred.
So moved by Mary Lynn, seconded by Brett. Voice vote to close 2023-24.
Right.
Yeah. All in favor, sorry. Aye. Okay, so next is all opposed?
Second.
So our tonight's consent agenda includes the approval of minutes from our regular meeting and executive session last month on August
So moved by
10th.
Mary Lynn, seconded by Brent.
Personnel
Voice
report.
vote, to be closed.
The second read of policies from personnel from 12. Yeah.
All in favor?
And the annual presentation of the Employee Information Services Report.
Do we need any exceptions or abstentions right here?
You ask if anybody wants anything pulled.
Yeah. Does anybody want anything pulled?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
I moved by Becky, seconded by Mary Lynn. Roll call.
Mr. Grodanis?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowenski?
Yes.
All right. Vote passes 5-0. Okay, next on the agenda is presentation of the Employee Information System report.
And that's in consent.
Oh, sorry, next is financial report. I did that.
Financial, yeah.
I'm just checking them.
That was
Oh,
me.
Yeah.
That was me. I had
You have the bills.
I had the bills this month. They were pretty straightforward. I think I had a couple of questions. Just little ones. Like Chris got all new furniture.
Mhm.
I was like, what's going on? So I found out that Miss Curry. Yeah, like there was a lot of office shifts and stuff. So I was just like more out of curiosity than questioning anything. And then I think I asked one more question, but it was pretty straightforward. No questions from me. So I move to approve the financial reports as presented.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Grodanis?
Yes.
Mrs. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mrs. Bowenski?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. And we move to the superintendent's report.
All right. We welcome and thank our partners from Archon and Nicholas and Associates, who have been working with the administration and with our board for the last couple of years. We realize that there's a lot of moving parts to our facilities and finance planning, both from a what do we need to do kind of a perspective, as well as a what can we afford to do kind of perspective. And so, as we talked about last month, and we highlight again in this presentation, Christian, are you able to show this one? Thank you. Really, again, continuing to talk about taking parallel paths, that we have to plan and be judicious in our spending and thoughtful in our planning, because we have to deal with our reality as it exists. But it also requires us to think more broadly at a long-term kind of path. So, Christian, if you advance, please. Thanks. The discussion always starts with the need. What are the needs in our community? We went through an extensive process last year prior to our referendum question on the ballot, and as we refine and reflect on where we stand today versus then, we still believe that these district priorities for full-day kindergarten and expanded early learning is an essential component. Now we've made even more so by the mandate from the state of Illinois. We know that enhancing our security and safety remains a top priority for us as well. And investing, just like we do in our homes, investing in ongoing repair and maintenance, hopefully preventative repair and maintenance, will help us to stay on an even projected path, so that when the clay pipes do break under something, we have the ability to fix that, and we're not, putting Band-Aids on problems that can grow to be bigger. On the next slide, we've discussed before, there are a number of components to this that we've identified some solutions for. First and foremost, we still have the projection for an 8 classroom addition with 12 office spaces, a relocation and refurbishing the LMC and the main office with a enhanced welcome parent entry area, waiting area, as our solution for the full day K. In terms of safety and security, we're making some investments this year with signage and some fencing. We put a lot of time and energy into some of our training, as well as this year we're looking at the installation of an increased number of interior and exterior security cameras. And then long-term at Eisenhower, the safety that comes in redoing those parking lots and exterior doors and windows across the district. In terms of maintenance, again, we also look at that from a maintenance standpoint, that if we can tighten up our envelope, our building envelope, it'll help with energy efficiency and will prevent further damage. As you well know, the siding and windows are pretty aged here and across the district. And so we're looking at a multiple phase project for this coming summer, which we'll talk about, the windows and siding at Ross, Sullivan, and Grodsky, and then looking at MacArthur windows and siding later, and Eisenhower exterior enhancements later as well. So again, this parallel path idea is one that we just our reality right now is we can't just hope that things get done. We've got a plan for them to get done, and the way we're looking at that is with available funding and with our current resources. We know we have to continue to prioritize and make decisions. So on the one hand, we're doing the best we can with what we have. On the other hand, there are needs that are greater than what we currently have on hand, and so that requires us to kind of think into the future for what additional funding might be able to provide for us. Next slide. So for each of these, our current plan for the repair and maintenance, we're going to talk about in a few minutes. That's the windows and siding replacement at Betsy Ross, Ann Sullivan, and Grodsky. That would be done in the summer of '24. If we were able to receive additional funding through a referendum at some point, that's going to go directly to expediting the work at windows and siding work at MacArthur, as well as other long-term facility plan projects, things that we've done that are on our 10-year plan that we reviewed last fall, including restroom upgrades and those types of things. Next slide. So I invite our friends from Archon who've been with us from the get-go of this to kind of talk a little bit about the process and where we're at in that and what some of our next steps are. So thank you, Aaron, Brian, and Jeff for being here as well.
Absolutely. So as you all know, we've been working on this project for some time now. We kicked things off in early spring to really dive into some of the details with the window and siding project and work with your administrative team. And then we also met on numerous occasions with a team of principals and staff to review the overall scope of the project and to gather some input from those people in terms of priorities and to discuss the aesthetics of the project. So what you're seeing on the screen are the current renderings of Betsy Ross and Ann Sullivan schools. Part of the process and part of the discussion with your teams was how to improve the aesthetics. So we've talked about introducing a lighter siding color to really add some pop to the building, to freshen things up a little bit, to make them a little bit warmer and more welcoming. You see too the window replacement. We had looked at several options in terms of window type and window aesthetics. The team landed on a dark bronze window to tie nicely with your existing perimeter metal. And then we weighed some of those priorities, especially in terms of safety with the team. One thing that kept coming to light in part of our conversations was that the team really wanted the means to exit the building in case of an emergency. So we talked about maintenance and the HVAC system and how to make sure things were operating smoothly on a day-to-day basis, but options for allowing for that means of egress. So what you're seeing rendered and what we've discussed, including in the bid specs, would be for an egress window. We also talked about several alternates and discussed priorities in terms of those alternates to pare down that list a little bit. In the end, the Building and Sites Committee made some final decisions in terms of what really should be included in those drawings. But we did explore the idea of adding windows and expanding, and that kind of fell to the bottom of the list. So the things that we have talked about being included, and if you go to the next slide, are the main entry canopies, some additional door replacements, and then some addressing some of the existing soffits with some additional metal work. In terms of the canopies, that's something that the committees got pretty excited about. So it would be an alternate that the group would consider if on bid day numbers came in favorably. And really the concept there is to kind of try to achieve some parity between schools, create a more inviting entry, but also make the entries feel equal between the three schools, especially at Sullivan, where it's currently a little bit smaller and less distinguishable than the other entries. So really exploring the concept of adding a different type of material, changing the color of the siding at the main entries, adding a kind of a stone look element at the columns flanking the main entry doors, and then some new lettering. And then what you see above is the option that we landed on at Brodsky. There too we explored several approaches. One was to enlarge the existing window openings. This approach was a little bit more budget friendly, and also the team thought that it matched the aesthetics nicely of the existing building. So we had numerous conversations about budget in terms of trying to make some decisions that were both pragmatic but met the end goal. So you'll see the breakdown by school. Nicholas and Associates prepared an initial budget. We had that number vetted by a window manufacturer more recently. So this kind of is the overall breakdown. We do anticipate the bid value to land somewhere around the $1.8 million mark. And then, as you know, the district is also pursuing some security camera work and is addressing window treatments separately from the project as a means to kind of reduce the contractor markup and hopefully make that number a little more favorable than it would have been included in the bid. There's also the alternate bid list off to the side, so those will be items that will be bid separately from the base bid, so that on bid day we can evaluate how the numbers have landed from contractors and make some decisions about the final scope to accept an award via contract. So as I said, we kicked off the process with the team in early spring. We have been worked from March through kind of mid-June to finalize the scope, to talk about the aesthetics, to make some decisions, and then we've been cranking away with construction documents to target an October 2nd out to bid, knowing that lead times on the windows are pretty long, and we want to make sure that we're comfortable with the duration of time the contractor has to get all the material ordered and ready for the project. So we would anticipate a November approval should numbers land favorably, and then construction would take place this summer from June through August. And then as Don mentioned, we've currently broken the project up in phases, so MacArthur would be a phase 2 item, and we made sure that we were thinking through the solution at MacArthur in conjunction with Sullivan and Ross to make sure that the whole campus will feel very cohesive. We've also included anticipated budget values for MacArthur, so we would expect a cost on bid day of around 1.6. Sorry, I need glasses apparently. With an all-in total around 1.7. And then similarly to the other schools, we would approach the main entry as an alternate bid to the project. This is a tentative school. Should we end up targeting construction summer of 26, we would follow a very similar timeline to the current project and kick off the design conversations in early March. And really, we've made a lot of decisions already and established some standards through the process. So hopefully the process would be pretty straightforward with the phase 2 work.
And again, the reason for that delay is we need to wait until fall of 2025 to be able to have enough borrowing capacity to take out bonds for the second part of the project. With additional income via a referendum, we'd have the ability, because we have the plans and the specs ready, to move this up by a summer should that funding come through. Again, with enhanced safety and security, some of that is covered in our pop-out windows. But currently we have, we'll talk next about our interior-exterior security camera replacements, enhancements. This summer we did fencing, some signage, a lot of training, and some ongoing maintenance around safety. Again, with the referendum campaign, rather than the Band-Aid approach to fixing a door here and a door there, we'd be looking at enhancements to door hardware replacement, again, expanding our security camera coverage, and the Eisenhower parking lot is one that we view both as a facility need but also as a safety need as well. So we've got the funding plan for those current projects, and then we would be working toward the referendum campaign. Should that be successful, we'd be able to move forward on some of the others. Who's want to talk through this slide? Do you mind?
Sure, no. So utilizing our available dollars, we've been working over the summer to make some improvements. Specifically, we were able to replace the Eisenhower fence. We also partnered with neighbors to offer a gate opportunity for them where they paid for gate replacements. That was a nice partnership. We also are continuing our work on security cameras, and Chris and his team have worked with Raphael to kind of establish a good a number of areas in which to enhance the current coverage that we have. And so we are awaiting the decision, as we've talked about, on the COPS grant. We'll know early October, and that was just over $220,000. So we should have a decision early October, and then we'll know how we're going to proceed with that moving forward. And then we've been working with a vendor. We continue to work with that vendor for installation in November or December. We also were able to use some buildings and grounds dollars to work to enhance the signage. That was one of the things that came out of the safety and security audit, was the need to really kind of identify our open spaces a little bit better and kind of lay down some guidelines when the public is walking through. And so we've installed, I believe it's 6 of these signs on the right, on posts throughout the Eisenhower and Mack and Ross Sullivan open spaces. Additionally, we've put up larger signs. We have 2 on Ross and Sullivan, and then 1 at the rear of Mack mounted to the building and under lights, so those are visible at all times.
And then the early learning and full day kindergarten plan. Currently there are no design changes or building facility changes. There's no additional funding for us available to us to move that project forward. So in essence, we're just kind of maintaining our status quo. Program refinements are a different sort of thing, and that is always an ongoing process. We're looking at early childhood curriculum this year. We're looking at our kindergarten performance. But in terms of long-term planning or short-term planning, we don't really have anything in the works in the short term for resolution there. But as we talked about many times, the addition at Eisenhower was the best solution that we had identified that would provide space not only for the full day K, but an expansion of early childhood, and then provide additional enhancements to the office, the working spaces, the therapists, interventionists, and to the library as well. So that funding source is really the key to any of those enhancements. We just, we have a good idea of what the solution is. We just don't have the economy right now to invest in it. But we're going to present to you again some of the findings from last time when we met last month. The board gave direction, authorized the administration to just kind of start refining and seeing what that would look like. And so we engage our partners at Nicholas and Archon again to draft sort of that next phase. So this is the solution. You guys want to run through these at all, or I forgot which ones were yours and mine. Are you on the table, or do you want me to?
No, we can go through it.
Okay, go ahead. Sure.
Absolutely. This is very similar. It is the same plan that you saw before. The 8 classrooms are shown in the blue. That's the addition. The square in the middle that's blue, that's the library. So everything to the right of the vertical line that's just above the building there would be your addition, and then south of the library. Everything to the left of that, including all of the white spaces, are your existing building. If you remember our conversations before, a big part of this was to try and provide some supplemental spaces to support all of those specialists who are doubled up and tripled up. You've got psychologists sharing spaces and social workers sharing spaces, and confidentiality is really marginalized. And then you've got a number of things that are happening in what used to be an ample size or appropriately sized library, but it's been carved up with offices and classroom type spaces, so it's gotten fairly small. And the offices and such that are in there, they're open offices, so there is no such thing as confidentiality or noise barriers between different groups that are going on in there. So it was a big part of it. Within the addition and those 8 classrooms, we're also showing in green a multi-purpose space, which gives you additional space for physical education, for therapy, for lunch, for a number of things, including potential community use. Part of the area there that's in yellow, the big block that's in yellow right next to the library, is renovating a couple of spaces into a new, appropriately sized administrative office suite and nurses suite to give you washrooms within the nurses suite, and then also make that a part of a new main entry to the building, which is right off of the new parking lot and drop off.
Now the most exciting part, right?
Yeah.
Again, Scott Richard, Nicholas and Associates, good to see you all. Appreciate you having all of us tonight. So if we go back to the original a year ago, 2023, or approaching April of 2023, my apologies. Budget set at 20.4 million. The tax impact is listed there on the form. As we look forward now, fast forward a year, looking at the conceptual drawings, the team talking and looking at it, the number has gone up. A couple things to that. So, is the 20.4 still in the realm? It could be, absolutely. It's not. We wanted to be fair and be transparent tonight and say, based on current market conditions of the last, I would say, 8 bid openings we've had in the last 4 months, based on those numbers, that's how we got 25.5, right? So still high level conceptual drawings, narrative details, talking with the team and us bouncing ideas back and forth. We wanted to be fair and transparent to all of you that based on the market conditions now, that's the numbers we're seeing. Could they change? Absolutely. Budgeting here in August, September versus the next, we're going to be going through 8 more here in the next 4 months. Now we're into winter. People are going to get more aggressive, in trying to fill their schedules for next year. We're really hoping the next 8 get more aggressive. But right now, as of tonight, sitting here, that's based on live market conditions. Looking forward, I know there's 2 options similar to where we were a year ago. There was a risk that the district can take in cutting the design loose now before referendum in the spring. That's something we've talked about last time. And to Don's point earlier, knowing the variables, knowing the budgets available, I know the district's weighing that risk, and you all are weighing that risk. So we put an option 2 out. So if we don't start the design, we wait till referendum, which design would then start right after referendum passes in April. Construction kicks a year, so we're still looking at that 25.5. Plus, we did add a little what we think is escalation going out another year. So, we're still thinking bid timelines, bid timing is going to be aggressive. I'm not going to sit here and say 20.4 is off the table because we really don't know. it really is in everybody's best interest in the room, the board and our team, to get the design going. Because if we get the design going, then it starts our process of really working together and monitoring and tracking step by step during design to try and dial these numbers in. So it's that we understand it's that, weighing the risk of cutting that design loose, but just as an overview, that's kind of where we ended up with the numbers that we did.
So with all of the multiple variables at play, the recommendation from administration is to continue to plan for our immediate needs using the financing we have. We'd like to move forward with phase 1 of the windows and siding project here in October, as well as proceeding with the phase 1 security camera project. And then the parallel path to that is the referendum discussion. As we've done in the past, you need to connect with representatives from the community and put some of the options that are out there. As Scott said, the finances are variable, but so are the components of the plan. And if we had to make some reductions or some cuts, what would those look like? Where would they be? Also thinking that we do have 3 attempts at passing referendum, which is not uncommon, unfortunately, for districts to not pass it on the first time and have to come back time and time again. But again, if we feel that that need is still there and we feel like we have a pretty good solution to it, we want to kind of plan out what that referendum pathway might look like. So we would engage the community and some of those partners that were involved in our community outreach focus groups last time around. And we would give them some opportunity to give some feedback about where that price point and where the need is and how those two pair up. And then we would be bringing a recommendation to the board in November for potential vote in December to place a question on the ballot in the spring. So we see the challenge of time not working on our side. Things just get more and more expensive as we push things out. The same exact plan A to plan A now in the second time is increased. It's likely going to continue to increase, so that means the longer we're waiting, the more we're pulling away from the solution that we really liked and we felt was appropriate. But those are realities, right? We have to make decisions within the confines of what the community supports in their schools. So these are at least the administration recommendations. I included a memo in the board packet kind of trying to explain some of the strategy and thinking around why these are the recommendations they are, but we also open up the floor for questions from our partners for the board as well.
I think the challenge I think that just I have personally, right, is just the sheer magnitude of the increase, right, and that this is, we have a referendum that did not pass last year, and now we're kind of walking back the exact same plan, right, but it's going to cost 25% more. And I hear what you're saying in terms of where the costs are at, but I guess you give more detail about kind of what you're seeing in costs and how is this really kind of just a cost per square footage kind of calculation? Or I guess to me, right, to me this is really tough to bring to the community and say like, hey, we're trying it again, but it costs 25% more, and continue to kind of hold this over their head to say, hey, if you don't pass, it's going to be more expensive next time. That's not the way that I would want to, kind of try to sell this and bring people on board. But I guess you have are you able to kind of share I know Mary Linda, you have seen some of the stuff, but just in terms of really being able to show the community that these are really the costs right now, I think to me is something That's going to be really, really important because, you know, we're going to be asking a lot of people to get on board with something that already failed, right? And we're asking for considerably more money just 1 year later.
It's a fair concern and it's a great question. You know, at the end of the day, it's, to answer your question, it's market condition based on per square foot cost for similar scope. So high level, 35,000 feet, based on bids we've opened in the last 4 months, applying it to square footages for program space per Archon's designs. So again, 35,000 feet, we could show that data, we've got that data, we could be happy to provide the data. Detailed estimates we can't provide because we don't, you know, to no fault of Archon, we don't have the details to bid, right? So, you know, as we look at it, 35,000 feet, we start design, we start whittling down. Then when we get to a certain point, yeah, Nicholas could sit here and go, here's a detailed estimate for everything on that plan. That number most likely, because we can dial it in, will come down. But to provide the square footage that we're calculating, yeah, we can provide that. But like with anything, you know, you renovate and you say, I want to, you know, renovate a room, you start ceilings, carpet, paint. Well, then what is that? What is the ceilings? What is the paint? What is the carpet? What is the metal panels? You start dialing it in. More detail means better numbers. But per square foot, based on market conditions currently in the last 4 months.
And what was it and what is it now? It was six, it's in the 800s now, isn't it?
It's around 800 now. The results we've had in the last 4 months ranges from 700 to 1,000. So we didn't go full 1,000. We kind of looked at where we possibly could go with it, and we came in at 800. I would have to see I don't know what the 20.4 was based off of, but the new numbers were based off of roughly 800.
What was the cost per square foot that you were saying?
440.
440 for the Highland Park facility?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is at 450 for new construction and 400 for renovation.
For Highland Park?
For this proposal.
Oh, for this one.
Mhm.
For your cost per square
Right.
foot before
Oh,
you
got it,
add,
yes. Yep.
and then I think before it was 350 and 300 before you added
Got
the
it.
site.
Got it. Yep, I got it.
But what was the 700 to the 1,000?
It's all in numbers versus construction cost only.
So the 800 is fully loaded. Fee structure, design fees, contingency allowances, all number wrapped in one package. Versus what Aaron said is what we call the hard cost construction costs.
Okay. So the ballpark number that we have now is that the construction costs are about $450 per square foot, and then the all-in costs are between 700 and 1,000.
Yeah. So previously,
Is that right?
yeah. So previously, the addition. Let's take the addition. The addition was at 350 per square foot hard cost construction. The renovation was $300 per square foot hard cost construction. Now, with what we're seeing, the additions bumped to 450 and the renovation 400 respectively. But the overall fully loaded number is up at 800 with fee structure.
So I'm sorry, I might have missed this, but if we go ahead and start coming up with a design or whatnot so that you can narrow in on the actual cost, how long does that take that to do versus when does a referendum have to be registered with the state or the county or whatnot? I mean, do those even, I guess I'm feeling like we would not have a more solid number by the time we got it together, bid it out, versus when we get you ready for the next referendum, correct?
Correct.
So we would be asking for a larger, possibly, amount of money than what, at the end of the day, our schematics may support.
Correct. I mean, the range of options are still on the table, from roll it out exactly as everything included that we had last time, because while it did not win, it also didn't get crushed. So you know, is that would be the high end, obviously, it's we're not adding anything to the plan, to the solution, it's just costs more. And then you talk about different iterations of, well, what would it cost if we didn't do this playground, if we didn't do this 2 classrooms, if we didn't, and then what's the corresponding impact to programming long term? So all those iterations of costs are all the different variables that are at play. But to your point, the initial, sort of the most important components of the design, we won't have the full design done by the time we need to go make a decision in December. But our hope would be to at least have identified where we're at in terms of a more, a better targeted cost rather than a generalized cost. We know that we can bring some of it down. You know, the site work is the biggest largest ticket item that could be variable. If we end up doing the sampling and find that we don't need to put in, you guys have talked about, you know, the groundwater.
Detention versus
Right.
above ground detention.
And the geothermal is another, but those are a couple of the key indicators that if those come back early, again, we won't have the final designs done, but that would give us a good indication that, okay, maybe that $2 million doesn't need to be $2 million for site work. Maybe it can be 1. But those are the kinds of things until we start to move forward, we just won't know. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, and we also.
Because that's the question that we're all wrestling with, for sure.
Right. We're having conversations about structuring the bid so that, you know, you could bid alternates, so you can go with a lower number. If things come in favorably, you can accept more scope in the form of an alternate, being a potential approach as well.
What is the deadline for issuing the request for the referendum?
This first one is December.
December, okay.
So at our December board meeting, we would have to make a decision specific to the language, specific to the question, which has to identify the dollar amount and the impact to the taxpayer.
That's December 14th.
Can you walk through the 2 site issues a little more with the, like, what are the decisions and the costs related to this groundwater issue and geothermal?
Well, right now, we don't have a survey yet for the site. We haven't started any formal design work. So part of what we would need to explore is how large is our footprint, how much detention is required, is there the availability on site to support above ground detention, or does that have to go below a parking lot? We would really need to engage in a civil engineer to start those formal calculations and formal process and have a survey done to gather enough information to know those things. But underground detention costs a lot more than above ground detention, so that piece alone might swing. What could a potential swing be there? $500,000.
Oh yeah, at least. I mean, depending on how big it is, it could be a substantial number.
And then,
I mean, to Don's point, it could swing $1 million if between the on-site detention and we talk geothermal or however that tweaks, it could be substantial, yes.
and then we haven't had conversations about, would we be extending the existing geothermal system? Is there any capacity left to support part of a new building addition, or would we be proceeding with different mechanical systems, knowing that the cost of a geothermal well is substantial and would also impact the detention element? So I think if we could start to take off some of those big picture decisions, it would help refine these numbers.
Can you remind, I guess you know the picture anymore. I don't even remember where our geothermal field is over at Eisenhower. Where?
That's been under that baseball field.
Well,
No, it's towards the
Yeah.
front on the side of the building, between the building and Camp McDonald Road.
Oh wow, okay.
Okay.
And it's
Okay.
really kind of squished in there
Yeah.
according to existing drawings, so we don't have it.
It was kind of like under that swale,
Yeah,
that
it's
hill there.
That's exactly where it
I
is.
didn't
Because I
know
know
that.
nothing could be built over that.
Right.
So, bless you. So just to understand this more too, so we're saying the geothermal we have there may not be big enough to support the addition. So we either maybe have to add on to the geothermal or
Or take a
have
different approach and not
Uh-huh.
connect your new mechanical
Like something
systems
more
to a geothermal.
conventional. how long will it take you to do these preliminary sorts of things?
Well, the first step really is to have a survey done. That we have to gather some proposals. We have a feel for numbers from some previous exploration. It depend on availability of someone to get out. We need to await the results, and then we have to pull in a civil engineer. So, and a half.
6 to
Six
8 weeks.
weeks,
6 to 8 weeks, including the survey time.
So I guess so basically what we're saying, if we don't make a decision very quickly, and if we want to do this preliminary work, we really won't have much data to help us know what number to put on the referendum, other than to
Right.
go with the maximum so that we don't screw ourselves over and not have enough money in a worst case scenario, I
Well,
guess.
yes, and to gather a little bit more of the pulse of the community, who many were supportive, but some obviously weren't, many weren't. But, you know, what is that price point? And we continue to make our best to look at if the price point is too high, to bring that down with just some of the programmatic pieces that we know. For example, the playground, I use that again, that's it's a couple of $100,000, but every little bit helps. So, to your point, we don't want to undercut ourselves because we know the need is great. We know that we're not going to have opportunity to go out multiple times and pass successful referenda, and that there's certainly plenty of good work that needs to be done. So, if we go out at a higher number, that's at least people can understand why it's where it is. In this first attempt, I think that's probably a good idea, but the investment in do we start the design work now or do we wait is, it'll provide some insight into what the final number would be at this December, but it won't be a full revamp of the numbers by any stretch by that point in time.
What is the cost risk to start that? Right, like I know, 'cause we talked about this last time, right? And we chose not to go that route. We
Right.
chose to wait. What is the? I don't know if that's the right question. I think you know what I'm asking. Without.
So our fees are structured based on kind of phase of the project. So schematic design, design development, construction documents. 80% of our fee is earned through or up until the bidding process. So it would kind of depend on how far we would get. And then of course our buildings would trail our progress as well. So yeah, take our fee and kind of divide it by if we get to 30%, that would be the portion of our fee that would be incurred up to the point of the referendum.
So I think we talked about the total amount that we would need to incur potentially before referendum, right around $826,000.
Yeah, that was getting us through 50% CDs, which we won't be there before the point, the
Right.
December 14th
Right.
mark, or we would be
Right.
there
Be
sometime
less
in
than that.
March, so divide it in half to get us to the
Right.
point, December 14th.
But that,
Can you walk through that again?
Yeah.
Will you just,
The number,
Yeah.
$826,000.
right, so what is that?
That would be the cost of the design work prior to.
Through 50%
Right.
construction documents.
Okay, so your total fee based on this $25.5 million estimate is about 1.65 million? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
And then you're saying that, just hypothetically, if we started planning now, that you could get about halfway there by December, or
By-
by
through
March,
March.
by March.
No, through March. We won't
Through
be
March.
halfway there by December, yeah.
You said you'd be like half of a half in December.
And
It's not a quarter. It's half of a half.
And it's all contingent upon how quickly we can get information from a surveyor, from our consultant.
Right.
But that investment, again, if you know, if we feel the need is still there and we feel this is the right solution, at whatever point from now moving forward to build at Ike, to build any kind of addition at Ike, we're going to have to invest in this. So whether we're doing it now or we're doing it later, you know, is really a factor of, if we have that information earlier, we can be more targeted in refining our scope in making decisions that are more specific and based on actuals rather than the hypotheticals. And then you'd have that in your pocket moving forward, that you wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't need to incur that cost a second time or a third time. We're gonna incur the cost at whatever step of the way, and it is still a percentage each step of the way. So as the cost goes up, so too does the cost for the design work.
Scott, can you speak to that, to the cost implications of delaying the design work?
You basically lose a year.
Yeah.
So what we had on the slide was, so election date was March 2024.
Correct.
We would start construction August of 24. Your building would be ready August of 25 with the addition and all the interior modifications. Option 2, election date doesn't change. We then start design. Your construction wouldn't start till March of 25, and your building would be ready August of 26.
And that's a similar timeline, assuming we have the design work, if we're going to consider a November 24 election cycle, and then again in April of 25. Each of those three would give us the opportunity and the timeline to have the construction completed and open by the current deadline that's in the current legislation for full day K mandated. So we have, our back isn't up against the wall that we have to do something or make a drastic cut of any kind to programming, to services, until we reach a point where that our back is against the wall. And that'll come, if they're unsuccessful, that'll come in approximately, you know, spring of 2025.
But we still have a waiver option too. I mean, I guess
Potentially,
I
yeah.
hate to
Right.
say
Yeah.
back against the wall, because to me, until things are really worked out and how are all these districts across the state that don't have full day
Right.
kindergarten and don't have money for it,
Right.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, we don't know
they're not
what
gonna
that
come and shut
waiver.
us down. I mean,
Right.
you
We
know,
don't know what that waiver is going to look like. and-
Right. Right.
True.
And
And
what? I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the team did meet with Mary Beth Canty earlier this week.
I know I wanted to ask on that Facebook post
Yeah.
if she was giving us money.
Well, that was part of the.
I really held myself back.
Right, that's part of the conversation.
Mhm.
And again, in the early conversations, they've discussed, the state has discussed, yes, putting some money toward these projects. But that's, again, at a 30,000 foot level. Who does that actually go to? Would we qualify? What amount would that be? But there are a lot of those variables at the state level that we still are projecting out. So that's kind of, again, for my own sanity, that's where I'm like, what are we doing this year? What's our plan? What can we do to put ourselves in the best place? And then what's our plan long term? And how do we resolve the challenges we have? Because, you know, everything is going up in cost, and our referendum have not been successful since 1987. So we're pretty running a budget's pretty tight, but we're running a positive, you know, in a positive budget, but we don't have a lot of wiggle room or any wiggle room.
Depends on the day.
Oh, right. So I guess the other side though of this whole thing is, so we're talking about whatever, spending $800,000 to have all these grandiose plans and have a referendum. I mean, do we have a community group that is like, oh yeah, let's go we need that component of this
Right.
too. There
Right.
needs to be that. I mean, have people that worked on this last time, were they back and they're like, yeah, let's go? Or I mean, what are we hearing from the community? That we don't really
Yeah.
have anyone.
Yeah, the response that we got right away was, now we have a better understanding of the game plan. How soon can we start again? How soon can we rally our troops and get back out there? How quickly can we, get behind this again and get the message out? So there's definitely a core contingent of folks that were really involved last time that have expressed interest again. Our challenges, we're not directly involved in directing them or supporting them, so it's really just at this point it's more of a, well, watch the board meetings and you'll know when the board says yes, you'll know that that's time to get going. So
And so, I guess the understanding is that they realize how much, so there's this bigger ask out there now that they're.
No, they do not know that yet.
they, if they're watching
If they're
now,
watching,
they
they
do.
know.
Right.
But
Right.
that,
I mean, that's huge too.
Yeah.
If they've all
I think
fallen
it's
over
huge.
their chairs at home, no one's really here in the audience
Right.
even.
Yeah, that's why really the next step for us is we've got to gather some of that community input again. And we've got to say, is 25.5 out of the question?
Right.
And they may say, yeah, it's absolutely out of the question. Or they may say, no, people expect it's going to go up, maybe not that much. So split the difference and ask for 22.5 or something like that. We were calculating also on that impact number. So what is the per $350,000 home dollar amount of tax impact? Because that's what it really boils down to for the taxpayers, is what's it going to mean to me, not the overall ask. And so we're trying to find where is that dollar amount. We were at 455, and if we go at this rate, it's 529. Is a $500.
I mean, there was a time when, people said, well, maybe if it's under 4,
Right.
I would go for it. And now, well, it's got to be under 5. Over 5, I think people are going to say, forget it.
Yeah, I think
I
that
don't
you're
know how
going to
we sell
find
it,
that.
and we don't have enough information
Yeah.
about how we got that number
Right.
to support it. So that concerns me too.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. What are your thoughts?
I'm just going back to Amy and the finance. Like we talked about doing a survey, doing the workup, starting with plans. Like, do we even have the funds to do the pre-work to get sharper on our number? I think the answer is no, based on some of our conversations. But you're
It's
the
tight,
expert.
there's no question. I mean, but we could start some of those processes to see where we're at.
Yeah, I was thinking that it's along similar lines as you, which is, can we spend less than 800,000 to help us refine the number a little bit, right? Like, how much does the survey cost us to help us understand the groundwater issue, right? Like, if that's just I'm making
Right.
things up, right? What if the civil engineering survey is 60 grand and the geothermal analysis is 50 grand? Spending 100,000 to help give us a better idea about a couple $1 million seems worth it to me.
I would agree.
Spending 800,000 for to pitch this, which I think is in a much less favorable environment, and asking for more money.
Yeah.
I think that we're not gonna. I think this is gonna be really tough to pass in this election, asking for this much money.
Yeah.
And to Bryn's point, right? That I don't know that we have 800 grand sitting around.
I'm not even sure we have half. Like the little I know, like we're gonna do a survey, like that's just vendor cost, and then we need Archon to do the analysis. Like we don't have the funds to even really start that process. So the bids we have, like I think that's the decision we have to make up to get comfortable with a number. And so if it's not 500 and it's 499, like whatever we need to put out there, I think that's what we're gonna have to decide. We've got 10 weeks before December 14th. So
Amy, just to clarify too, the budget
Right.
that we're about to vote on, the bottom line is a $300,000 surplus across all funds in that.
Across the operating funds.
Across the operating funds.
Right.
And so, and we have nothing budgeted in there for this?
We don't have anything budgeted right now for these services. We have some line items budgeted for construction services. The other thing, like we've talked about, is the window siding and doors, which those funds we have from the prior year's bond issuance. We have that. We also have some surpluses and other funds that we can utilize to put towards this.
Becky, you
I
had-
will say I see the value in getting started on the design work so that we can refine the numbers a little bit. To Scott and Aaron's points, I think we have the ability to invest some money and tighten up and see where we're at with the geothermal and some of that site work to potentially get that number down a little bit. Sorry, Becky.
I hear you, right? Like, you can't come up with 800. Like, it's a lot of money. But what I'm also hearing, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, if we don't do this, we have the potential of it not being 25.5. We have the potential of it being 26.4. Like, if we wait even longer to do that work to see where we're at, because then we're pushing it out even further. So then it's not 455 and it's not 529 per house. It's 540. Like, we just keep getting bigger by like kicking the ball farther down. I also don't know where 826 comes from, but then does that become 900? Like, right? Like, it just keeps, like, we're just pushing the problem down. And I agree that there could be waivers out there, but I go back to, like, just because there's a waiver doesn't mean that's what's best for kids in our community, right? Like, and I don't know. I don't know where the money comes from. Can we plant a money tree?
Well, the
We'll call it
800.
Eagle Scout and see.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be here this weekend, right? Can he like do
What
something?
kind of
to, like-
plantings can you put down?
Like, there's money trees, right? Like, they exist.
Yes, we have one now.
Okay, just checking. I'm just thinking, like, if I hear we don't have the money, but if we keep kicking the ball down the field, like, we're not gonna have the money that, like, at some point, I don't know.
Well, we do have the 826.
Right.
It's not in an operating fund right now, but it could be transferred there. And, you know, we have to think that we have multiple attempts at this referendum ask. It's not something that, you know, when you look at the demographics of our community and who's going to come out and vote, it would be really tough to pass it in the spring. But that doesn't mean it couldn't. I think the flip side of that is we've articulated a need. We've identified a solution that we're really excited about. We think it gives the community long-term what it needs. And so thinking about it in terms of a 3-step or three more opportunities, I think is how I would present it to the community task force and just try to get their take on what's the primary messages.
I have 1.5 more thoughts. Not 2, 1.5.
Is this the whole or the half?
I don't know yet. Just listen and you'll decide. We said last time there are people that are going to say yes no matter what we ask for. Right?
Yep.
We could ask for $1,000 per house.
Yep.
And they're going to say yes. There are people that are going to say no no matter what we ask for. Right? Like, it does not, those are not the people, it's the people in the middle. And I guess part of me hears that after that last referendum that failed by a very small amount, we lit a fire under some people too. That I think, I agree it's a bigger ask, but there are now people that were like, oh, I don't need to vote, that are now going to vote because they're like, man, if I would have just voted, or my husband and I would have voted, that would have changed that. On the flip side, I think there are people that didn't vote no, that like now will because I just think that there's...
But I think there's people who, whatever that number is per household, is significant, and it's going to depend on what that number is.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's probably more people who are looking at that number, even if they want it. You know, if it's $500 and they can't swing that, they can't vote for it.
I agree.
So I think it's important to figure out what that number is for folks.
I just think that like we look at this, the farther we kick it down, it's not going to be
Right,
500 anymore.
I agree.
It's going to be 550. Then it's going to be 600. Like the closer we get to November or August of 2027, right? The more that number is going to be.
Right.
Construction costs isn't miraculously going to like go down. I'll be above it, right? Like I don't know.
And I think perhaps a nice first step, because we have requested survey proposals in the past. We think it came in maybe around 25,000 from the surveyor. We could also just ask the civil engineer, what would your proposal look like to do a site analysis? You know, maybe it's 50,000. It might be enough that's palatable and give us enough information to help kind of inform next steps. So it doesn't hurt to start there. To our breakdown, as I found my paper, to get us through like schematic design was roughly 165,000.
Right.
So it's a small portion of the overall 800,000, but would put us on the path of finalizing scope and kind of taking off some of those big ticket items like mechanical systems.
Yes.
Well, I think also the survey is not money that just is wasted if the referendum doesn't pass or what something else changes. It's a survey. It's that information is gonna be good for quite a long time as long as you don't push dirt around on the site. It's certainly a good value for the district to spend the money on getting the survey. Because it'll come in handy down the road for some other project if something changes.
So the Archon 160,000, what you were just walking through there, Aaron, that would include the survey. Would that include like the mechanical geothermal analysis?
No, so the survey, like the breakdown of the overall Nicholas budget, the survey falls kind of below that construction line as an owner expense. It's part of the information that has to be gathered. It's done by a third party.
Right.
So that's a separate line item. The 165 will be the start of schematic design. So it'll be us engaging with our mechanical engineers, our structural engineers, our civil engineers to start defining the actual scope of the project, to start having conversations about big picture items like what should the mechanical system be. The geothermal piece, if we can start making some decisions about geothermal in general, like do you even want to extend the existing system? Is that important to you? Or I think your placeholder was like 600,000 for geo. If you're not interested in that, that number goes away because we would move forward with a traditional mechanical system and use rooftop units or unit ventilators, but we wouldn't tie them into the geothermal. It's kind of those big picture decision-making things happen during the schematic design phase so that we're moving down a solid path.
So you said like the survey and something.
Schematic design.
So that'd be, nope, there was survey and something else.
This survey is a
and
separate cost.
was like
The
30.
schematic design is Archon's cost to complete kind of that first 10% of work.
Did I hear like 125 somewhere? Am I making that number up?
I said 160.
She said 160.
No, I heard 165, but I also heard something
Yeah, there was
about a
75K. There
certified.
was a civil engineer and there was a survey.
Thank
So it's
you.
$75,000
Right,
roughly
thank
is
you.
what you sort of
So
said.
we're
50,
carrying-
25.
But the civil engineer's under us.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
take that out.
if you were to just do, I guess to simplify it, if you were to just do the site analysis, just do the survey and have an engineer, have us engage an engineer to do that analysis, a portion of that cost, roughly 25,000, would be an owner direct cost.
Right.
That isn't part of our fee. The other portion, which is the civil analysis of $50,000, $75,000 roughly, that would come out of that schematic design fee.
Okay.
Now that schematic design fee, if you commit to doing something, that doesn't mean you have to do all of the schematic design. Certainly the site analysis could be done in isolation of the rest of the schematic design fee.
Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Thank
I think, yeah, an important piece is that we're carrying all of these consultants. So our fee pays the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, pays the civil consultant, it pays the structural engineer, it pays the landscape architect. So that's why the fee is what it is.
But not the survey.
But not the survey.
Thank you. I knew I heard a number other than 165.
Well, I'm trying to help.
What?
What number did you hear?
Don't worry.
It's not
Make up a low number.
Guys,
So based on the budget,
Exactly.
they would be at 165 to get through SD. We're carrying $50,000 as a bottom line direct cost for geotech, which is your soil borings, and the topo, right? So with civil, that would be review of acreage, disturbed area, how much detention we need, et cetera, et cetera. We would do the geotech, we'd get the borings, groundwater, all that good stuff, and then topo. So roughly for 210, 215, and may need to take math over again, 215, that's ballpark what you're looking at.
Plus survey?
Do you agree? Well, survey would be
Survey's part of
topo,
that.
that's
Okay.
for the 50. So for 215, you're getting,
Got it, thank you. That's what I was
Yeah,
You're
looking
getting
for.
more narrow in scope.
Right.
So
Thank
we
you.
can figure out if the
That's all I needed.
25.5 is the actual number or
See
not.
the notes. Thank
Okay,
you.
so to be
That
fair,
seems
you're
like
fine.
some, yeah, that seems like.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
To get it started.
To get it started.
But we need to
And
move.
to give us information,
Yeah.
like, you know.
Right, like, you guys have appointments tonight, right?
well, so to put that into a bigger.
It's
bigger
only 9
context,
o'clock, guys.
215,000. We're carrying 600,000 for the geothermal.
Right.
We're carrying 800,000 for the playground.
Right.
We're carrying 2.5 for the site work. So right there, you know, the delta between the original hard cost, the 20.4 number, the hard cost was 15,535,000. The hard cost on the $25 million number is 18,995. So if we can get through this study, determine the detention, say it goes away from underground to surface, that's going to save money. We work out the geothermal, that's going to save money. You can lop a good chunk of money off right out of the gate if it goes the way we hope it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
Then after that SD, we're going to have a little better drawings to look at. We're going to have a little bit better drawings to budget. So coming in to note that December deadline.
The two special educators in the room would like you to stop jinxing this conversation.
Well,
Chris and I are like, oh my gosh.
I think all of it though is in the context of the question of what is the community's response to that. You know, it's not I don't live in the district, so it's not my tax dollars. So the next phase for us prior to presenting anything in terms of recommendation is where do we feel the community's at on this? Are they sticker shocked as well? I mean, we certainly were. Would it make a difference if it was 23 million? Or does it have to be where it was last time? I mean, I think there are a lot of those kinds of variables or those kinds of questions that we just won't know until we invite that input.
I think just the problem with, you know, you absolutely should talk to that group, right? I think, you know, I know that you have not talked to Gonja yet, but I think getting her feedback and everybody that participated in that is, but I guess, I think that just part of the problem is you cannot get a group of your most enthusiastic supporters, right, get their feedback on this and then think that that's represent, you know, we
Correct.
need to find the people
Right.
that are on the fence about this,
Right.
who voted against this last time,
Yep.
right, or who were marginal last time to really, you know, if the community feedback is a big part of this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how exactly you do that, but I guess just, you know, Bryn, to what you were, like, to me, it makes sense to start with this, the 220,000 or whatever.
Nope, he said 215.
The 215, the 210,000.
I wrote it down.
To me, it makes sense to do that to kind of help us refine the number. And I really think that part of this, if we move forward, this part of selling this is explain to the community why these numbers are 25% higher than they were last time, and understanding, right, the actual cost for actual projects that you're working on, whatever background you can give. I understand you can't give us, but the actual cost per square footage that you're actually doing, work that we probably need to do some research on this, right? I think it's, and again, I think it's worth talking to other districts, other potential partners, just to get a gauge to say, is 450 and construction and 900 all in really what the market is at now?
Yeah.
Because I think we're gonna have to convince the community that that's the case
Right.
if we bring this to election.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best first approach before we start talking about programmatic cuts. Because that's the other variable. You've got your construction costs that you can reduce, but if you're gonna reduce construction costs, that's fewer classrooms. So does that mean that we lose our parent paid early childhood component? You know, are there different ways to look at that? And so before we start negatively impacting the services that we can provide kids, let's get to a point where we have a better sense of the construction cost and get that feedback as to where we think we're at in this current election cycle.
I would agree.
Is there anything else that we need to do tonight? Or any other feedback from the board? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
As long as we get consensus to take this next step, that's all we.
2:15.
Is that, but,
That's
do we
I'll talk
need
to Joe. Cover Archon, we'll work it out. How about that? Is that good?
Yeah.
We have to move. The timeline is tight
No, I get
here.
it.
We can't wait till next month.
Yeah.
So we either have a special conversation offline as a board and figure it out,
Yeah.
or we just do it
This
now.
would just, yeah, really, we just need direction from the board to move forward with the community engagement and
And preliminary.
preliminary design work, yeah.
Do we need to vote or just kind
Yes.
of give you, is everybody on board with kind of what we've talked about here, this direction with this spend of?
So by preliminary, it's doing the surveys.
Well, what we would need to do next would be to get actual dollar quotes. It's, you know, it's nice that you wrote it down.
That doesn't count.
What we
We
really
agree.
need is they'll document that for us, and then we would bring that item forward as an action
Ron,
item
I
to
thought
vote
if I
on
wrote
that.
it down as the secretary, it counts on my messy piece of paper.
It does.
Thank you.
It does.
And we
But
agree.
We won't be able to formalize it.
But Don, is it even, so it'll be another month before we meet again to vote
Yeah.
on such a thing? Do we need a special meeting?
Or can we give them approval in a not to exceed amount at this point?
No, because we didn't put it as an action item on the agenda.
Right.
We have our September 30th meeting,
No,
The Saturday workshop.
the Saturday
Yeah.
workshop, which would probably be the most,
Because
the timeline. Mhm.
okay, 'cause we'll
Yeah.
also be interviewing candidates as
Right.
well too, so
Right.
we'll have some extra
We'll have a
meetings
couple of
there.
extra meetings there.
Okay, but so I mean, that makes sense to me to try to get the proposals
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
for this first phase as quickly as possible, and then that, you know, as soon as we get them, that just the next time that we're, you know, that at least 4 of us are together, right, or the next meeting, to try to vote on that. Yeah, 'cause I agree with Mary Lynn and Bryn,
Yeah.
that get this stuff approved as
Yeah.
quickly as possible to, and not.
It's only
wait until the next
9:06,
meeting.
guys.
Yeah.
It's only 9:06. You can do this
We're gonna
tonight.
jump on it right now.
You can do this tonight.
Work done right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you for your time, thank you for
Yeah,
coming out.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, the next agenda item is the approval and adoption of the 23-24 annual budget. Earlier in the meeting, a public hearing for the fiscal year 24 school budget was held. Based on the tentative budget being presented on August 10th, the public being notified in the newspaper and on the website as required by law, and the budget having been displayed for the minimum 30 days as required, the board is ready to vote on the district budget for fiscal year 2024.
I move to approve the Prospect Heights School District 23 fiscal year 2024 budget as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please. Sorry. I lost my spot because I had the presentation open. I'm sorry.
Mr. Grodanis,
Yes.
Mrs. McClaney,
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark,
Yes.
Mrs. Peters.
Yes.
Mrs. Botwinski.
Yes.
Carries.
Motion carries 5-0
9:08
at 9:08 p.m. Thank you.
The next item is also an action item. It's the administration's recommendation of the approval of the 2 interfund transfers to help in mitigating the implications of the delay in Cook County property tax revenue.
Anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right. Yep.
I will move, oh, sorry.
Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the resolutions for interfund transfers as presented.
Second.
Moved by Mary Lynn, seconded by Bryn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Grodanis,
Yes.
Mrs. McClaney,
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark,
Yes.
Mrs. Peters.
Yes.
Mrs. Botwinski.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 at 9:09 p.m. Finally got one right there.
You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job.
Next up is another action item is the school maintenance project grant. It's the $50,000 matching grant through the state that was discussed at Buildings and Sites and Finance.
I move to direct President Kevin Novak to sign and for administration to submit the school maintenance projects grant application for $50,000.
Second.
Moved by Mary Lynn, seconded by Becky. Roll call, please.
Mr. Grodanis?
Yes.
Mrs. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mrs. Botvin?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0 at 9:09 p.m.
The next item is an information item. Dr. Curtis presented an overview of the department topics, including the adoption cycle for science this year, early childhood programming, and developing a career and tech ed component. Were there any questions for Dr. Curtis about that report?
How is everything going? Just because I know, just because it seemed like that ELA was a big jump last year, right? And then, not all of this science is new, is it? There's
the social studies,
or the social studies.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, is that really a lot for people to be juggling with doing kind of a big chunk every year like this?
No, I think the way we do it is very nice because it's one subject at a time. So it's not a ton to manage. At the same time, you know, like you mentioned, ELA is a lot to take on. So, you know, it's especially I think in the elementary levels, it's a big chunk of their day. When you look at the reading, writing, spelling, handwriting, all of those subjects at once, you know, it's a majority of their school day. So that one was a huge one to take on. Social studies, not as big, but there are some bigger years with the ELA and the math. But the way we do it, small chunk at a time, probably, I think, of the districts I've been in, this is the best way to do the curriculum cycle. So
it
nice.
Seems like, I mean, it's always amazed me, all the committees and the number of participants on the committees, which to me suggests that, you know, whatever changes are that year, that information gets filtered out much better than if it were just, you know, one or two people, or you were deciding, well, this year we're going to do this. So, you know, not that there aren't, you know, bumps in the road, but it seems like it would be about it.
The other piece you just hit on there is, you know, getting everyone in the room for the curriculum adoptions and everything. It's always a very representative group, whether you're talking about the special education team, having bilingual representation in the room. There's representation from everyone, every grade level. Yeah, so it's just nice to have all the voices in the room too.
No, that's a really good point, Carol. And because I think the other part of that too is if they feel like they have a sense of ownership of it, right? When they actually roll it out, because you could see that last year when we were at Ike and they were talking like that they really they wanted to be there and tell it, you know, and talk to us about it. So I think that is great to really have those big committees because it gives that sense of, you know, A, that they feel like they're being heard, and then B, when it rolls out, that they have a sense of ownership of it.
I think you can also see that in, you know, the social studies adoption from last year. The fact that at Eisenhower and second grade, so up to second grade, the teachers actually chose to do a teacher-created curriculum, which is a huge undertaking, yet that's what they chose. So that says a lot to just their engagement in the process.
All right. The next item is also an information item. It is our enrollment update. There are no changes or modifications to the staffing plan, and I showed the breakdown in the memo of where we're at compared to what was projected, and I still think we're seeing variability based on some of the movement that occurred during COVID, some of the kids that were homeschooled or private schooled kind of coming back in. We hit fairly well on our overall target. We're only off by 23 students. So that helps us then to plan for sections and so forth, which is shown in that bottom graph. The yellow are all of the bilingual and special ed sections, and you see the rest in green are all under our class size guidelines.
When you do the class sizes, I know that you said that they're all well within whatever the range is.
Mm-hmm.
Can you always include what the
ranges are? Sure.
Set for the ranges.
Sure.
Because it's helpful when we're looking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
I should have thought that
Because I
myself.
feel like it is
Very good.
usually on there.
You know, the one thing that I noticed on here that seems different this year is that, especially in 8th grade, like the class sizes are like lumpy a little. Like there's, you know, it's like 18, 19, 25, 17.
Right.
And just like, what's the background as to why there's, you know, such variability in the class sizes there in the 8th?
Sure. So in 6th through 8th grade, we pulled class sizes for social studies because that's the most consistent across all three of the grade levels in terms of types of levels of courses. What happens when you're building the schedule is that you end up in similar tracks. If you're in a math class, for example, and you have Spanish, that's going to limit the other options for the rest of the part of your day. And so you can create sometimes bubbles where this group of kids that are all in honors and they're all doing band or orchestra are all doing Spanish, they also all have to be in this section of social studies.
Okay.
So that's why it's harder to look at the middle school level because each class is a little bit variable based on the number of kids that are in some of the differential programming.
Okay, so this is not advisory. This is the social
No,
studies
this is
class.
because advisory they have 20.
Usually 15 max with the exception of Unit 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be nice as an asterisk to put in your 2. I didn't realize you did it that way. No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's down at the bottom.
It is down there. Sorry.
That's
Just
right.
really
Oh
small.
my gosh.
That's all right. No worries.
I only look at the charts. Sorry, I gotta start reading the footnotes.
I tried to use the
Thank
colors
you.
too to.
And then the only other thing, and like the 3rd grade bilingual seems like is like twice the size of the 2nd grade bilingual. Like, does it seem like that we may need like a 4th grade bilingual class next year, or no?
No, because our programming shifts there.
The program,
to,
it's going to move no matter what.
The kids are not self-contained in 4th grade.
Okay.
In one section. And by that point, they've transitioned to distributed among all the other classes.
Okay.
But this, in September, this kind of wraps the start of the year, and then in November, we get projections for enrollment for the following year.
Okay.
So the more we refine this, the better. The news around pregnancies, live births that are in our area, in our region, that slowed down for a little while. And I don't know, when I was in the hospital last, I heard a whole bunch of the music.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, a lot of babies being born. So we'll see you in about 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So that's the variable that we don't have any control of.
So our enrollment for this year is up from last year? Or
No, it's down from last year. It's up from what was projected.
oh, right, okay.
And we're still filling that. The early childhood number is variable throughout the year, as you'll recall. Kids turn 3 and they qualify. We add them into the program. So while we're at 68 in this, we'll be at our 80 max maybe by winter. You never know. The next item is an information item as well. Mr. Alms and I have been working, as Becky shared earlier, on this communications audit. I just wanted to share with the board the current plan, the communications plan with all the variables and strategies that we're implementing, as well as the slide presentation that I have done, and I include that then on the website, and I include it in the school scene tomorrow. to the point of, you know, like how many times am I going to get communicated with, and what's the kind of information, and where should I go to find XYZ? So the goal of it really is to help streamline for parents that they understand that you're going to get the school scene once a month. You should expect to get a newsletter from your school every other week. As board members, you should expect to see that Monday memo every Monday. The faculty know when their 411 comes out. So it's just kind of to plan out that communication so that everybody's aware of what we're doing.
Thank you. This is just a constant, right? This never stops.
No, it doesn't.
It's I think it's tough. It's funny that I was, just here, I'm like, boy, this is tough. But then, like, Hersey,
yeah,
the bombardment from Hersey is actually like there's. I probably average, here I'm like, boy, do people really read this? I get 4 emails a week, and in Hersey I get 4 a day.
Yeah.
Right? And so this just, it's interesting just to kind of to get the context of it when you have a kid in another district. So,
For sure. That's a big part of the audit is, are we reaching people in the most efficient way? And we realized we've gone through a number of iterations over the years, but we didn't used to text as much as we do now, and so now we text a lot more because that's what the younger families are used to, and they're not, waiting for a letter in the mail anymore. They want to see it online. They want to be able to click a link and open it up. So
we talked a lot about that too, is that like households, right? I threw my husband under the bus a couple times, but like we talked a lot about like just because it's the way I like to get information, is it also the best way for spouses and houses to hear all of the same information, and are we reaching everyone that needs to be reached?
Right.
We really talked about that, and not just worrying about one way of communication. That's a big one.
any other questions on that? Okay.
Old business?
Just a reminder, we did schedule with IASB and Arlana on September 30th for our board workshop.
8 a.m.
I think it's 8:30. I forgot exactly what time
I
I
think
said.
that's what you said.
It's in the morning though. We'll do a half day.
Would we have a new
It
board
is,
member?
it's 8:30 to
I don't. So it's at 8:30. Yeah.
8:30 to
8:30 till noon. No, we
That's
won't.
aggressive.
What'd you say?
Yeah.
Would we have a new board member by now?
No, because we have the applications even open
That's true, yeah.
for 2 weeks. We won't be able to interview until the first part of October. It's possible. It's going to be tight, but it would be possible to
seat them at the
seat
board
them at the October board meeting if we have, quick respondents and we can get a date on the calendar for
that first
the
week of
interviews.
October. That
Mhm.
first week of October.
Do we still want to keep that September 30th meeting with 6 of us, or does that make sense to do that with 6?
So crazy.
I know it's so hard to
crazy.
schedule. I know that's
We
a
should change it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm trying to I want to make sure I have September 30th on my calendar. Sorry.
Yeah, and so that's all I have for old business.
Okay. New business? Nothing. And so then there will be no executive session?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. And so I think that would then be ready to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Who a second?
All right, moved by Carol, seconded by Mary Lynn. Do a
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rodanis?
The last one. Yes.
Mrs. McClaney?
Yes.
Mr. Nordmark?
Yes.
Mrs. Peters?
Yes.
Mrs. Botwinski?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0 at 9:23 p.m. Anything else?
Thank you all very much.
So I hit this to close it out.
All right.
Thank you all for the
signed everything?
What's that?
You signed everything?
You know, I think I did, but the only one that had the tag in the middle was the budget one, right? Everything else was not. Yeah, I think we got all the rest of them.
Chris, I have 2 questions for you. I'll come to you.
Don, I got one for you.
Oh, she did.
2 for Amy.
So many.
Oh yeah.
I thought you told them about the trailers, and that's why you quit. I was like, Brian, come on.
So, are they getting a good
I
turnout though of tickets?
I don't know. But if it's not recorded, it doesn't look like it's recorded in there. I'm not sure.
So I volunteer for.
It's so fun. I have always wanted to volunteer thing because it was like so much fun to do the volunteers and they're, you know.
Right.
I think it would be fun too. I'm sorry we're not going.
I'm not.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there is right in the